It is harder than ever to try and keep up with movies. Sure, if you're in the movie algorithm, you're gonna know all the biggest movies coming up. You're gonna be practically a genius. But for someone who is out of the loop, it is as hard as ever to keep up with movies. There are about 1 million different places to go and find a new movie. It's overwhelming. Netflix, Max, Peacock, Paramount Plus, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, Apple TV Plus, movie theaters, some in limited releases, and VOD. It's insane. Back in the day, you got a newspaper, it told you what movies were playing, and you went to go see one if it looked interesting. I think the easiest way to start caring about these movies that aren't IP based is by learning a bunch of movie directors and deciding to go see a movie based off of who is directing that movie. For most movies, directors have the final creative say in what you are seeing on screen. Once you learn who is directing a movie, you almost immediately know what kind of movie it's gonna be. So in this video, I'm gonna give you a list of directors and I'm gonna go through era by era. So let's jump in and start with the faces who are somehow still around making bangers, the old guard. Starting off with a true classic, Steven Spielberg. If you don't know who this guy is, you are definitely a true beginner to film. He brought us insane classics in the 80s and 90s like Jaws, Jurassic Park, E.T., Indiana Jones. I mean, some of the best blockbusters of all time. Nowadays, he's not really in a blockbuster phase anymore, but I still think he is putting out some consistently great movies. Especially, in my opinion, The Fabelmans, his most recent release. It's an autobiographical movie. It's so unique and it's such a great love letter to film. Not to mention he kind of killed it with the West Side Story remake. And if you miss Spielberg's blockbusters, his next movie is a UFO movie. Alright, Marty Scorsese. To the younger generation, he's the guy who hates superhero movies. To the older generation, he's the GOAT, right? He's the best. His resume is nuts. He made Goodfellas, Taxi Driver, Casino, The Departed, Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, the list just keeps going for this guy. He doesn't quite like how much he made being in the mob or being a bad person look kind of cool in his previous films. His two most recent releases, The Irishman and now Killers of the Flower Moon from last year, are both methodically paced movies that let you live in the pain and suffering of the wrongly tortured characters that are all based on real people. They are both uncomfortable and eye-opening experiences with really long run times. But if you're looking for something shorter, his next movie is supposed to be another Jesus film, and it is supposed to be significantly shorter according to Scorsese. Alright, Ridley Scott is the oldest dude on the old guard at 86 years old. If you need a refresher, some of his most famous movies are Alien, Blade Runner, Gladiator, but he also has some recent bangers like The Martian with Matt Damon, as well as The Last Duel, also with Matt Damon. The movies House of Gucci and Napoleon definitely have their fans, and if you do watch either of these movies, please just turn your brain off and enjoy them. They are absolutely ridiculous. Jared Leto plays Waluigi in House of Gucci, and then Joaquin Phoenix plays a temper tantrum wet diaper version of Napoleon Bonaparte in Napoleon, and it is absolutely hilarious. But luckily for the people who have despised this Ridley Scott era, he is returning to an old classic with his next movie. It is Gladiator 2 with Paul Mescal. George Miller is kind of a last-second addition to this tier, and he is mainly known for this guy right here. And without that guy, I don't know if he would be here. I think Mad Max Fury Road is one of the best action movies of all time. And I'm recording this before Furiosa comes out and before we have gotten any reviews on it, so we really don't know if his continuation of the Mad Max saga is going to be good or not. But if the movies are even just slightly worse than Fury Road, then we have a lot of good stuff to look forward to from George Miller in the next decade. He also has the movie 3,000 Years of Longing with Tilda Swinton, which has grown on me almost every day since I've seen it. It's a great one. But please keep an eye on George Miller because the past decade he's made two fantastic movies, and he's got a follow-up for it coming soon. All right, finishing off the old guard with Hayao Miyazaki. And a lot of people call Miyazaki's studio over in Japan, Studio Ghibli, the Disney of Japan. But I really think it's something bigger than Disney. After watching a Miyazaki movie, it will feel like your heart has doubled in size and grown from how much love he has put into the movie you just saw. And luckily enough for you, if you don't want to watch a subtitled movie, all these movies are dubbed and all the dubs are on Max. So go watch them. If you watch one Miyazaki movie, you're gonna go down the rabbit hole that I have in the past year. You should absolutely start with his older movies like Kiki's Delivery Service or My Neighbor Totoro. Then you can move on to Spirited Away, Ponyo, some of his more recent stuff, and then finish it off with his two most recent autobiographical bangers, The Wind Rises and The Boy and the Heron. I think The Wind Rises is the most beautiful animated movie I have ever seen in my life, but it really only hits hard if you've seen the rest of Miyazaki's stuff and you know who he is at this point. All right, these 5 directors are probably names you've heard of before. I mean, they have dominated the blockbuster in the past. These guys are going to deliver a great movie theater experience almost every single time you see one of their movies. So let's start with the man of the hour, Christopher Nolan, who I think is one of the most, if not the most reliable name in cinema history. On this blockbuster list, Nolan might not be my first recommendation for a brand new beginner into movies. I think Nolan is a really good intermediate director. When you're truly figuring out what movies are about, you can check out Nolan because he really knows how to play with the idea of time in movies. But if you do want some beginner movies from Nolan, watch his Batman trilogy, watch Dunkirk or Oppenheimer. But if you do want an experience where your brain is exploding, then watch Inception, Tenet, or Interstellar. Obviously, he just finished Oppenheimer, so we don't know what his next movie is, but I mean, you could probably guess what it's gonna be, and it's gonna be amazing. Tarantino has been such a staple in this blockbuster cinema since the 90s, and he is a true master of action, violence, and just fun filmmaking and screenwriting in general. He's also great at homage filmmaking, and just looking at the movies that inspire him can introduce you to a whole new part of movies and Hollywood that you've never heard of before. From everyone I know, it truly feels like I hear of a different favorite Tarantino movie. Like, some people love Kill Bill, some people love Pulp Fiction, some people love Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I mean, he truly just makes an event out of almost every single one of his movies. So check out any of his 9 movies. They're all amazing. They're all great. Please watch Tarantino if you haven't. I like to consider Denis Villeneuve kind of the little brother to Christopher Nolan, even though he's older than Christopher Nolan. He started making movies, at least American movies, in the 2010s, so feels like he's younger. But his movies give me a very similar vibe. They both like sci-fi a lot. The biggest difference is Denis is maybe a little more friendlier to beginners. He doesn't have as much confusion or time dilation in his movies. The only thing that might be hard for beginners is Denis really likes to make slow-paced movies. The Dune movies are kind of slow-paced sci-fi epics. They are not as fast-paced as you think they would be. In the early 2010s, he had some great underrated hits that weren't really at the forefront of the box office, like Prisoners, Enemy, and then Sicario. I think he really started to strike gold with the movie Arrival, which I consider to be one of the best sci-fi movies of all time. It is absolutely amazing. And Denis will continue to dominate the box office because there's supposed to be a third Dune movie, Dune Messiah. Get excited for another Denis sci-fi classic. Greta Gerwig is a blockbuster boy, and you probably know Greta Gerwig mostly from Barbie. But if you knew of Greta Gerwig before Barbie, she definitely wasn't a blockbuster boy. The next category are the indie darlings, and I think Greta fit way more on the indie darlings list before Barbie came out. But now she's a blockbuster boy, and with her next movie set to be Narnia, like, it just feels like she's going in that direction. Like, she wants to be at the top of the box office. And I know Narnia's on Netflix, which means it is virtually impossible for Greta Gerwig to be at the top of the box office when Netflix has limited releases for all of their movies. Greta Gerwig is an amazing, amazing director. I mean, Barbie is absolutely hilarious, absolutely fantastic, and one of the best comedies of the past decade. But if you haven't seen her previous movies, Lady Bird and Little Women are even better in my opinion. I recently rewatched Lady Bird and it's just entering all-time classic territory for me. It is just so good, one of the best coming-of-age movies ever. I don't care about Narnia at all, but Greta Gerwig will make me care about Narnia. I can guarantee that. All right, the last blockbuster boy is not a director, it's an actor, it's Tom Cruise, and it is the only movie star on this entire list. And the main reason I had to do that is because Tom Cruise really hops around directors for which franchise he's working on, between like Top Gun or Mission Impossible. He just has different directors he works with on them. But in my opinion, at least out of his most recent films, it just doesn't matter who's directing him. He clearly brings the vision to the movie. If you want some of the only stunt work left in Hollywood today, you have to watch a Tom Cruise movie. Nothing is more exhilarating than going to the movie theaters and seeing Tom Cruise jump off a cliff on his motorcycle and saying to yourself, he really did that. Because he actually did that. And that is just so rare in today's filmmaking. Nothing beats the experience of going to the theaters and seeing something real, seeing something so cool, because it really happened. I think these directors are really talented, really good, but their ideas and what they put on screen, I don't think ever will truly translate into big box office numbers, into everyone in America wanting to see their movies. First up, Yorgos Lanthimos. And if you paid attention to the 2024 Oscars at all, you definitely have heard of his most recent movie, Poor Things. It took home 4 Oscars and it was very well deserving. But it is extremely weird. I am even a little icked out to recommend it to you. And it's not just Poor Things. Yorgos just makes weird movies, but they're beautifully weird. His movies often include some really stiff dialogue, makes everyone in the movie sound like they're robots or they just hatched out of an egg. Killing of a Sacred Deer is one of my favorites from him. And then he has, of course, The Lobster, which is a cult classic at this point that I feel like even my family members mention they love. But Lanthimos is quickly becoming a must-know name here in 2024 with his most recent partnership with actor Emma Stone. Just released Poor Things, but he already has a new movie coming out with Emma Stone once again, Kinds of Kindness. And according to Emma Stone and Yorgos Lanthimos, it seems like there's no end in sight for this partnership, so we're going to be absolutely eating for the next decade, folks. This is a pretty personal pick for me. I think with Luca's most recent film, Challengers, which I've already seen twice, he has cemented himself as probably a top 5 director for me. Luca is the modern king of the romantic movie. He went from sexy Italians to sexy cannibals, and now sexy tennis. But please see Challengers. It is just oozing with energy. I wanted to run through about 1 million walls after I walked out of that theater. Luca is just so good at filmmaking. He brings so many unique ideas to every single movie he has. Even Bones and All is great, and I think a lot of people didn't see it, but man, I think that one's absolutely fantastic too. This guy is from Italy and he made Nebraska look just as beautiful as Tuscany. Luca is clearly cooking. He's going to be making some great movies this decade. All right, with the last 3 on this list, we're getting into more recognizable names, and Wes Anderson has got to be the most recognizable. If you're on the internet, you see so many people replicating Wes Anderson's style with TikToks and stuff like that, but yeah, please do yourself a favor and watch the actual movies of Wes Anderson. I think much like Yorgos Lanthimos, The dialogue in Wes Anderson movies nowadays is so robotic and so hard to get emotionally attached to, but every once in a while he just puts out a movie that just hits you right in the heart. For me, that's Moonrise Kingdom. I love Moonrise Kingdom. It is such a great movie. We don't know his next movie, but it will be a Wes Anderson movie. That's for sure. David Fincher, I think, used to belong in the blockbuster boys. Movies like Seven, The Social Network, Fight Club. But things have really changed for Fincher, and it's not just a Greta Gerwig thing where Fincher has been making Netflix movies now, and he has extended that contract so his next 3 movies are going to be Netflix movies again. It's also the subject matter and the pacing of his 2 most recent movies, both for Netflix, Mank and The Killer. So if you're new to Fincher, don't start with these 2. See The Social Network, see Fight Club, see something like Zodiac, which I think is one of the best crime dramas of all time. And then once you've seen those movies, I think you could go back to Killer, which is kind of an autobiographical movie, so you will appreciate it a lot more once you've seen all of Fincher's work previously. Only go to Mank if you're a crazy little boy who loves Citizen Kane. Yeah, I love Citizen Kane, so I love Mank. Sofia Coppola is one of my favorite directors right now. She has unfortunately really flown under the radar since her initial hits like Lost in Translation. Obviously those movies are hits for a good reason. Lost in Translation is absolutely fantastic. The Virgin Suicide's insanely good directorial debut. I think her masterpiece is when people stopped paying attention, which was with Marie Antoinette. But I think it's absolutely brilliant to make a period piece like this and mix it with a high school teenage movie. But Coppola is still killing it. Obviously last year Priscilla was a fantastic movie, and she really makes a movie that I think is a little underwhelming when the credits start rolling, but then you think about it again a day later, and then it pops up in your mind 3 days later, and then a week later, and then over time you start to realize how brilliant the movie you just saw was. The comedy guy from Key and Peele is now one of the best horror filmmakers of today. I mean, one of the best directorial debuts of all time with Get Out. People like to sort of shit on Us and Nope, but honestly, I think it's just because they weren't as good as Get Out. They're 4 and 4.5 star movies in my opinion, and just because Get Out is like a 5-star masterpiece doesn't mean we should be extremely disappointed in Peele for not topping a masterpiece. And in my opinion, Nope is one of the best imitations of Spielberg we've gotten in a while. And Peele is going to keep going. He has another horror movie coming out in 2025. We're all excited. We know nothing about it. And that's the way we like it.
Come with me and you'll be...
If you haven't seen my other video on Wonka, I mean, it's obvious I had to put this man on the list. Paul King. Both Paddington movies are amazing, heartwarming, and it's hard not to cry at them. And if you saw my last video, I cry at Wonka every single time. He's just a master of children's movies theming and bringing out those emotions, man. Not to mention he's also so good at comedy and comedic aspects in his movies. First off, this is the one filmmaker that you won't be able to watch their movies in English. She makes French movies, and they're subtitled. But if you look back there, I changed my poster for a reason. Portrait of a Lady on Fire. It is a modern masterpiece, one of the best romance movies of all time, if not the best in my opinion. I mean, her follow-up Petite Maman may not reach those impossible heights, but is still such a quaint and amazing and cute story. And that's usually what you're going to get from Sciamma, a quiet, lovely, quaint film. All right, from the moment Chazelle released his directorial debut, Whiplash, I think people saw him as the filmmaker to look out for next. And Whiplash and La La Land may go down as the best first 2 movies from a director of all time. And what I love about Chazelle is he clearly wears his passions on his sleeve. He loves music, he loves LA, he loves love, and he most definitely loves the movie Singing in the Rain. And while First Man with Ryan Gosling and Babylon have seemed to not reach the heights that those first two movies have. I still think they're both underrated, amazing hits. Babylon is an absolutely wild ride that turns out is just a Singing in the Rain fanfiction, and that's hilarious to me. And Damien Chazelle, it's clear he's going to swing for the fences with every single one of his movie he makes. He's blasted it to dead center every single time. All right, welcome to the new guard, the Daniels, and they easily could have made the freshman class because the freshman class was meant to be just filmmakers who have only made one or two movies. The Daniels only have 2 movies under their belt, but one of those movies won Best Picture. If you've seen Swiss Army Man or Everything Everywhere All at Once, I think you won't be surprised when I tell you before they made movies, they directed music videos. And their movies are cut and edited very similarly to a music video. There are a lot of music montagey moments in both movies. They're both very fast-paced. They're both very fun. They're electric. They really have this rhythm to them. Not to mention, both the scripts for both these movies are so silly, so fun. They manage to make you cry at the same exact time. All right, I have to start with Celine Song. She is such a hot topic right now with her directorial debut, Past Lives. Past Lives was my movie of 2023, and for a good reason. It is such an amazing and honest biographical story that spoke to me on so many different levels. Don't get me wrong, her directing was great, but I mean, her screenplay absolutely carries this movie, and she is already slated for a new movie, The Materialists, which will star Dakota Johnson, Chris Evans, and Pedro Pascal. Kelly graced us with her second directed film last year, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. And it was one of the most underrated gems of last year. And with this and her previous movie, Edge of 17, Kelly Fremon Cregg is clearly a master of the coming-of-age story. She's going to kill it with whatever she does next. All right, the second and last directing duo on this list is John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein, but they are absolutely 2 for 2 in their past 2 movies in a landscape of movies that is sorely lacking comedy. These two are the shining light at the end of the tunnel. That's right, Game Night, please check it out, and Dungeons & Dragons are both just such good times at the movie theater. They're both genres that we are just sorely lacking nowadays. Speaking of comedy, Emma Seligman and the star of her 2 movies, Rachel Sennett, may be beginning the resurrection of comedy. It's a bold statement, but my God, did I not laugh my absolute ass off when I saw Bottoms in theaters last year. It is the return of the parody movie, kind of, and it is just hilariously done. But also got to shout out Emma's debut, Shiva Baby, which is an anxiety joyride. The whitest kid you know, Zach Cregger, surprised the absolute hell out of everyone with his 2022 release, Barbarian. Trailers made Barbarian seem like a gimmicky, awful Airbnb-based horror movie, but it turned out to be so much more. And it looks like he might be able to follow the same path as Jordan Peele, going from comedy sketch show to horror filmmaker. And he's already shooting his next movie, Weapons, with Julia Garner and Josh Brolin. And that's a wrap. Those are really some of the names I think you should remember going into this decade. If you see their name at the end of a trailer or on a poster or anything like that, maybe go check out their movies. I think all of these directors bring something worthwhile to the table. Obviously, there's way more than these ones. I don't have time to go through every single amazing director. So if I left out one of your favorite directors that you want to recommend to someone, please comment them below. I mean, there are so many. I'm going to leave a pinned comment below of some of the ones I was very sad I had to leave off. But I hope this guide really leads you to some amazing new movies and some amazing new ways of storytelling that you haven't seen in a movie before. Once again, thank you guys all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.